And wasn't Rockefeller part of that as well, or
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of programs, and this Aaron Russo was a film producer. And one of his last interviews, he talks about this whole plan by elites to create dominance. And there's also a book called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And it was a sort of a business plan for taking over control. And the first thing that they said, or was toward the end of the book, was we got to get rid of the women's mama bear energy. If we can control the mothers and disassociate them from any kind of longing to protect their children, then we're going to be fine. Because there's something within women, and you know that as a mother, that you can say, I'm not going to carry a gun. But if someone threatens your child, is going to kidnap you at gunpoint, what are you going to do?
The bear is
Right?
gonna come out for sure.
The bear's going to come out. It's genetically programmed in you. And it's important to recognize that in yourself as a human, because it allows you to see what can be the shadows, but what also can be wisdom. It's just that mothers need to protect their children. And if they're dictated by the demands of a job and a corporate, lifeless, profit-oriented, vulture capitalist construct, then you're going to be more concerned about pleasing that than taking care of your child. And there's no judgment here. It's just an awareness that that's what's going to happen. It can't help because you only have so much energy. No one talks about the effect of abortions on the body either.
Yes, yes.
And because I never took the birth control pill, it came out in the 60s. I was on
Me
college
either.
because I never took it because I just sensed this is not good. And I
Hmm.
have quite a few friends and associates. It was very common by the 70s, they'd have 4 or 5 abortions and would
Hmm.
think nothing of it. Now it's like going to the bathroom and celebrating I had an abortion, but no one asks, what is it doing to your body? What is it doing to your long-term health? What is it doing to your emotions? What is it doing to your chemistry? And it's what I call lack of care for your body
Hmm.
because something else is controlling your mind and your decision making. And that's why I love human design because it says it's in your body, girl.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Resonance. I'm your host, Cassandra D. Today's guest is an amazing guide, projector, self-projected projector, Barabra Ditlow. She's a 2-4. She has the 4323, so there's a companionship there for us. And it was just so much fun getting to chat with her and just like listen to her and hear all of the wisdom that she carries. And to be able to like just receive from her is such a gift. I hope you enjoy the episode. If you want to support this podcast, you can like, subscribe, comment, share. All of it helps boost and spread it so that we can have and continue to have amazing, fun guests. Okay, thanks, guys. Hope you enjoy. Welcome.
Great to
It's
be here. I
it's
love your name. I love your name. How did your parents decide on that name?
so I was the third and last daughter, and my dad's name is Cassius, and they were going to name the last son, if they ever had one, Cassius. And so they named me Cassandra because my mom really liked the name Sandra D.
Oh,
And my dad kind of wanted something similar. So they saw Cassandra and they're like, oh, that.
I love
Cassandra
it.
Danielle.
I love
Yeah.
it. It's a very provocative name. It has great historical significance of the mystical Cassandra.
I think it like, doesn't it mean like the challenger of man or something like this?
Something like that. It has a deep um, potential to exert powers that are difficult to explain.
Cool. I like that explanation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Right. Throw some questions here. I'm
Yeah.
ready.
So let's just begin by starting, I think, just like as a way to dive in, like
Okay.
whatever like comes up and what you want to share today about like what brought you to human design. Like how old were you? What was the year? What was your experience coming into design?
Okay, it was 2002. And it was 2002, but and so then I was in my early 50s. I was in my Chiron return. But I'd been in the New Age movement since the 60s. So I had been privy to a life that was very rigid, formatted by religions and institutional hierarchies and school systems that were very predictable and served the collective growth of, of the planet and also tribal expansion. Because I'm one of six children, and when I grew up, most families had minimum four kids or more. And most women were at home working, and most women were satisfied. I would say were satisfied with that. Um, and at 5 o'clock in the community, I was raised in suburban New York, and men would come home between 5 and 6 from their work, and they wore hats and suits, and women wore dresses. And I would go to church with white gloves and dresses. And school, you wore dresses. You could not wear pants. And then in the 60s, in 61, according to Human Design in February, I think it was February 20th of 1961, the equinox began to open up gate 37, line 1. It went from a second line to a first line. And that was also bringing the first line in the cross of the Sphinx, gate 61, line 1, which is occult knowledge, because in the progression of the equinoxes, in this whole programming of human design, you have two crosses. You have the cross of the vessel of love and the cross of the Sphinx, and they work together with each other. But the cross of the Sphinx has what we call the um, the emphasis on what's the secret of the time. And the secret of this time was the release of occult knowledge. And that's when you had precursors where Yogananda came to LA and started the Self-Realization Fellowship Foundation. And you had different people, Gloria Swanson getting into yoga. And you had, a smattering of a few people who were introducing new ideas. But when the 60s came, it exploded with music. And it started with first with the assassination of Kennedy. And that's when the government was usurped by global elitists in the country. And you could feel the change. And then the Beatles
How
came.
interesting too to think about at the end of that first line where now they had the JFK files
It,
released.
it brought in a nervousness and a sense of disempowerment in structures that were, you had the Vietnam War too, so there was a concerted effort to get young men to be fodder for the illegal war, and then begin to saturate the United States with heroin and drugs, and begin
Mhm.
to destroy the fabric of the country. Because if you look at from a larger perspective of a 400-year cycle, we're in the last 67 years. So the last 67 years began the breakdown of the family structure. It began the breakdown of the health and the immune system of people. It began to break down the interdependency of organizations that developed starting in 1615 all the way until what we see now, and is now bringing in the individual having to fend for themselves because the institutions are no longer to be trusted.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean violence. It means awareness. And so we're an awareness game, and you can see there are many different levels of awareness and frequencies operating right now. And the key that the New Age brought in is it wasn't really new. It just offered a different perspective to break from institutions. Um, and it's not the age of Aquarius. That doesn't come for about 300 plus years. And human design is based on Western astrology, but the precession of the equinoxes is based on Eastern astrology. And therefore, we've got a couple more hundred years before we get into the age of Aquarius. So, as Ross said, this is the return to Eden, and it basically deals with the awakening of the human spirit, but not as you would think by different modalities out there. Like the fifth dimension, we're in the fifth dimension. And I'm saying, well, yeah, but you're not functioning on the third dimension and your body's still here. What are you talking about? So there's a lot of information out there, which is beautiful in esoteric terms. But when I got into human design, it was a practical tool because I'm trained in many different esoteric modalities, and they're all wonderful. Human design provided a tool for the individual to make decisions that allows them to mature and develop their awareness outside of other modalities. You can use modalities. You can use plant medicine. You can use meditation. You can use yoga. You can use um, uh, all sorts of athletic endeavors. You can use pursuit of intellectual knowledge, but you do it which is true to how you're designed to function, because ultimately it's a game of awareness, becoming more aware of how you interact with the environment and where your consistent true gifts are. So when I got into it, I would say the grace that I experienced was I had had 40 years of pretty much being involved in consciousness. And when I met human design, it was by invitation because I'm a projector. And it was something that I was skeptical about because I had been to so many different gatherings, workshops, gurus, whatever. And when I met Ra, he was very aloof. But what he said was key. He said, this is a clear, logical, construct of who you are. And there's a certain way that you make decisions that can change your life. And what I liked about that, it was present moment. You make decisions in the moment because and the other thing that happened from the 60s is we went from a can-do society to a victim society. Oh my God, it's because my mother and father that I'm such a bear. Or, oh, I can't do this because I was molested as a child. That is a story of humanity. That is a story of being human. We have two sides. One side is very vicious, it's a killer. And another side can be just profoundly empathic and loving. And you're affected by your environment.
So you would say the 60s was when that victim mentality started to come online?
Yes, because therapy came in, which was very good, but it became a business.
Mm.
And what happens is if you're a therapist, and there's some very good therapists, but there's some therapists that are working out their own dilemmas and it just became that more and more people found areas to blame their own inadequacies. Now the beauty of this, there's a perfection for this, and therapy can help. However, therapy then evolved to coaching because people said, okay, you got your problem, I've heard the story 1,000 times, let's motivate you to do something. Now all of those modalities are great, but if they're not understanding the unique design of the person, you can be coaching to a person or providing therapy for them, which isn't going to work.
Hmm.
And
You can also be like ingraining yourself in the mental understanding of the problem rather than actually embodying change or being yourself
yes,
or
yes, and that's the sweep, you could almost say, of um, this dynamic last 60 years, 67 years, and we've got 2 more years to go.
so do you kind of feel like too, because I'm thinking about this as like a getting to the truth era since the 60s. So then it's like, I wonder, did the human consciousness have to go through that victim mentality to find out, oh, it's ultimately me? Like
Oh,
it's ultimately,
absolutely. No question, no
yeah.
question. But you can also see that it broke the parents, it broke the tribal pattern
Oh.
of the family that would keep secrets and say, if
Mm.
you're going to survive, don't squeal on your father. I mean, I had many girlfriends that were incested by their brothers. That was not uncommon. And the time that I was raised, the boys were golden. The girls were, they were just going to get married and have children. So there was a different kind of um, value with the sexes. And then it changed. So there's always, you can see this uh, evolutionary development. But a lot of people get caught in different corners of different situations and they never get out. They get trapped in different modalities and different situations. So whenever you're healing something, there's always that difficult transition from trauma into, uh, you could say, into wholeness. And oftentimes I'll talk to people that are very productive in terms of what society will say, but they compartmentalize. They don't integrate. And so I think that what I find with human design, you have to integrate. You can't live in a compartmentalized life. And many people do. I mean, that's the trauma bonding or people who have post-traumatic stress. And, drugs can help, but they're not the final solution. This is consciousness. And what I like about human design, it allows you to look at yourself in a very different way and say, oh my God, I am unique. There's no choice. I have to learn what self-love is, and I have to learn how to make decisions and maybe not be who I think I need to be for my mother, my father, my friend, my husband, my wife, whatever it is.
And how many of the traumas actually come out of that kind of just the not self decision making, like it almost like reinforces these like different paradigms or victim or, it almost reinforces you being like codependency or all these different things.
Mhm.
I have a background in therapy. I actually left that track and
Yes.
I think I mentioned that to you. And shortly after leaving is when I found human design. But in between that, I was doing the esoteric like yoga and all this.
Mhm.
Well, I still do some of that too. Um, but it's interesting because when I started practicing EMDR, are you familiar with that?
Yes. Yes. Very powerful.
Yeah, I felt like, whoa, talk therapy is just not where it's at. Like comparatively, when it comes to integrating trauma, how much more powerful I found EMDR to be and effective, just like to integrate those things into the body, which I also thought was interesting because I use that a lot because of, I don't know if it's like open spleen stuff, but like holding on and it's like how to release it truly and then integrate.
Yeah. And the open spleen, um, you could almost say is a sensitivity to the health of some organism, simply put.
Yes.
And you're sensitive to it because you want to feel good. So there's a sensitivity to your environment and other people, which can provide a sound basis for helping other people.
Mm-hmm. I like that reframe.
Hmm. Hmm. So I
So,
I find with the EMDR or plant medicine, it does break through the conditioning of the mind, the thought patterns, the mindsets and belief systems, many that you're born with, but that are perpetuated genetically through the family lines. And so part of the rise of therapy, back to the idea of therapy or psychology or whatever, it was really to provide an outside source outside the tribe to begin to change the tribal rules for people, and particularly for women and for men,
hmm
because you go to many countries where they have not been affected by this consciousness, and you can see the results of women that are not allowed to be educated or educate their children. And you can always see the development of a society is directly correlated to the education of the women because they're the ones that raise the children. Unless they farm them out to daycare centers, then we got a
hmm
problem.
hmm That's kind of the era we're in right now in the West.
Yes, yes.
It's like there was the empowerment, but then it became kind of almost like both partners had to work and no one was watching the kids.
And that was designed. That was designed. This is all designed. It's a 100-year program.
hmm
It was all pre-planned. And Gloria Steinem came out, I think in 74 or 75. She was a CIA agent. And because she was selected because she was a Seven Sister School and a Playboy Bunny, so they picked these people. And I'm not dissing Gloria, but I'm saying this is factual.
hmm
And she admits to it. And she was saying to people, to women, and there's a certain truth to it, that the big truth is you have to be financially independent in order to choose wisely a mate. if you're dependent on someone financially and don't know your value, see, this is the key. If you don't know your value, you cannot negotiate your value for being at home raising the children and running a household. Doesn't mean you have to go out and work. You have to know your value so you hold your position of respect. But what she was negotiating is saying you can receive greater reward in an 8 by 10 cubicle with a computer than being at home parenting children. And that may be true for many women, and go for it. But at the same time, there's a seduction to answers that are given to you by an authority outside of yourself, saying, oh, maybe this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that cubicle. So I can work my tail off from 21 to 38 because instead of having babies, I'm going to work. And then by 38, I'm going to say, I want a baby. They lied to me. Where's
Hmm.
my baby? And anyone who's had children after 35, the fatigue is unbelievable. That's why biologically, 18 to 22, you can deal with the sleepless nights, the sick kids, and all of that. I mean, there's a certain biological truth. But anyway, that's what it was all planned to get the women out and then have the state raise the children. And you can see that in any totalitarian regime. They
Hmm.
want to control the children.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it wasn't until I had my children that saw like that it was all a facade. Because I was like, oh, wait, hold on a second. There's a biological reality here where like I'm the one birthing, I'm the one growing, I'm the one feeding. Like, so it makes sense that I wouldn't be the one going out into the world at that time to get the money because I'm the one, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and so it was interesting because I was like, wait a second, I could have done this. I'm 35 now
Yeah.
and I have a 4-year old and a 2-year old, but I was like, wow, I could have done this a lot younger and that would have been easier, even though I was trained to believe I should like get a career first.
Mhm. Mhm.
But anyway, so it's interesting to watch how like those things, those like cultural, like what the way that it's all kind of programmed. And wasn't Rockefeller part of that as well? Or
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of programs, and this Aaron Russo was a film producer, and one of his last interviews, he talks about this whole plan by elites to create dominance. And there's also a book called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and it was a sort of a business plan for taking over control. And the first thing that they said, or was toward the end of the book, um, was we got to get rid of the women's mama bear energy. If we can control the mothers and disassociate them from any kind of longing to protect their children, then we're going to be fine. Because there's something within women, and you know that as a mother, that you can say, I'm not going to carry a gun. But if someone threatens your child, is going to kidnap you at gunpoint, what are you going to do?
The bear
Right?
is gonna come out for sure.
Bear's going to come out. It's genetically programmed in you. And it's important to recognize that in yourself as a human because it allows you to see what can be the shadows, but what also can be wisdom.
Well, and
Because
it's also, oh, sorry, continue.
no, it's just that mothers need to protect their children. And if they're dictated by the demands of a job and a corporate, lifeless, profit-oriented, vulture capitalist construct, then you're going to be more concerned about pleasing that than taking care of your child. And there's no judgment here. It's just an awareness that that's what's going to happen. It can't help because you only have so much energy.
And there's so many other ways too. It's like I think about how birth control affects like my whole generation. Not
Hmm.
only does it like it like even changes things down to like choosing a partner because you can't smell them correctly. Like
Yes.
and like even I think about who's the most highly who's taking the most like antidepressants, it's women, you know? So then I think about like not only the effect on women, but then how do all of those drugs and different medications impact the natural inclinations, to like have a family or to have children or to protect children or, you know, just to be in your own
I
body.
think it creates, no one talks about the effect of abortions on the body either.
Yes, yes,
And because I never took the birth control pill, it came out in the 60s. I was on
me
college
either.
because I never took it because I just sensed this is not good. And I
Mm-hmm.
have quite a few friends and associates. It was very common by the 70s, they'd have 4 or 5 abortions and would
Mm-hmm.
think nothing of it. Now it's like going to the bathroom and celebrating I had an abortion, but no one asks, what is it doing to your body? What is it doing to your long-term health? What is it doing to your emotions? What is it doing to your chemistry? And it's what I call lack of care for your body
Mm-hmm.
because something else is controlling your mind and your decision making. And that's why I love human design because it says it's in your body, girl. You
Yeah.
know, why are you letting someone take over your body? And this whole emphasis on making women as these sexual objects.
It's interesting too because it's this whole like, oh, women's rights are taking away your rights, but it's like what why do we equate killing a baby to like I don't know, it's just an interesting like it's an interesting equation of like that's the primary right that you have as a woman is to kill your own offspring. I don't know, it just
Oh, no, but that's something to really look at because what that is saying is that it's giving you power to kill, which takes away the mama bear aspect of you. And it also, what is the value of women been historically to bring children? And now we're in a time when eugenics is running the show. And if you look
hmm
at the Georgia Stones, many people are familiar with them. The elites or someone put the stones up, said we want to reduce the population from 7 billion to 500 million or something like that. And so it's every woman has the right, but it takes 2 people to have a child. And it's just a very interesting, will put it this way, it's an interesting choice that women make in terms of that. But I see a lot of women in their 60s and 70s, and I would have to say they're mentally ill. And they're mentally ill because they have no fabric of relationships. We are not, even though we're individuals, we need to have people that love us, people that will take care of us when we're weakened, when we get older, people that know our faults and know our strengths. And that's what you build long-term in relationships, whether it's with a partner or your children. And without that, you become desperate and you can hold on to the gauntlet that by God, I became an independent woman making it on her own. Maybe some women are very satisfied that way, but I would say that not all women are. And I would like to see most women feel a sense of worthiness at the end of their life, that they live their life rather than being a commodity for someone's plan to get rid of their femininity. Again, so the patriarchy can still rule.
I know it's an interesting irony when you like really are with it because it's like in a weird twist of events, it's like when you kind of think that the superior role is going out into the world and not that they're just differentiated roles. Like one is having bearing children, caring for them. And it doesn't mean you don't make your my dog's barking at a
Yeah.
package. Sorry. But it doesn't mean you don't make your unique contribution or whatever. It doesn't mean that you don't you do. I mean, think about, I mean, we are the ones that pass through to our children too. Um, but I just always thought that was kind of interesting because it's like women saying that that's the superior role by saying, oh, like men get to do it, we should do it too. But it's like at the same time, what you're really saying energetically is that being a mother is less than, like that role is less than a role where the being is going out into the world.
It's
So,
mind control. It's mind control. It's repatterning your thoughts and your value system. It's saying, I want a penis, but you're a
yes,
woman. And this whole transsexual movement
yes.
is very sad, very sad. Some biologically, uh, biological accidents, some people can be born as hermaphrodites.
hmm
And this whole idea that you just identify as a sex, you can become that. But that's where we've gotten to. That's where we've gotten to. And I'm very up close and personal. I understand this issue. And part of the programming is that we can't even discuss this anymore because
Yeah.
people are so programmed to be emotional. You must know that I'm trained as a cult deprogrammer.
Hmm.
And one thing that I learned from that whole process was that there are triggers put in that have strong emotional overtones of you're going to die if you consider another thought. In
Yeah.
other words, if you take in an opposing view, you're not showing your faith, your loyalty, or they're going to kill you, or something like that. Or you're not what I call empathically superior or whatever. And so it's a real mess now because when words are controlled by one party, when people are afraid to dialogue with another person and open up to another view, this whole thing of pro-choice versus pro-life, they're the same thing. You know, you've got the life of the mother, the life of the child, and is there choice or not? And how are you going to and women don't look and see how they're being divided instead of saying, let's look at your situation. Can you financially afford a child? Do you want a child? And I always say there are so many ways. Birth control pills, after evening after pills. What is the problem here?
There are herbs that women can take that stop the egg from implanting
Hmm.
early on. So if there was, because they always use kind of the excuse of like a rape, but even if there's an accident, there's things that women could do that are less harmful to the body overall.
Hmm.
But
But
yeah.
there's a big business with
Hmm.
abortion.
Well,
And
there's a
that's
big
why,
business with the whole trans movement too, because it's like
exactly.
they put these people on medications for life. And it's like eroding their bodies, and it's always the children who are most vulnerable. They come from like usually like a abusive homes, or mom and dad are gone and grandparents raising, or some usual situations where it's like there's a vulnerability, and then it's like often those kids that get swept up in it because they don't have that stability you know
Did you ever work with in your practice with anyone who was moving in that direction?
I actually worked with someone who was a therapist who was intersexed, and she was actually part of the team, um, shifting the definition in the DSM-5.
See, they're shifting definitions.
Yes. And she was actually born intersex though. So that's like such a rare thing.
Yes.
And still, there was a lot of like chaos around that. Like, um, it's just interesting, because they have like now what they're doing to children where it's like they're doing the sex changes before the frontal lobes even developed. It's like, why would we be giving that choice to a child first and foremost that's altering them forever? That seems so,
It's because eugenics, they don't want them to reproduce. They're getting rid
yeah.
of the human race and they're
Mm-hmm.
promising dependency, which they will not provide. They will not provide those chemicals later in life
Mm-hmm.
because the institutions won't be here to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my read. It's
Yeah,
because
there's a lot of detransitioning happening, and once they want to detransition, they're no longer supported at all by the system
Mhm.
because the system's like, we don't have a code for that. Like, we don't
Yes,
do anything with that.
yes. And see, that's an example of the breakdown of the family. And whether it's good or bad, if you don't have a support, one parent, at least one parent can make the difference. But if the parents are fighting, some of the people I've worked with, the little girls would be in the closet as the cocaine deal was going down and multiple fathers and all of that. It creates such trauma that the learning and the capacity to be consistent and focused and live a sound life is interrupted. It's very challenging.
Yeah, and
And
they're looking for a place to fit in, and that's become the new kind of like, if you're this, you're cool almost, it's like, oh, you're more accepted and for among the younger generations, it's like if I'm a kid who doesn't feel safe at home and I don't feel like I fit in anywhere and I don't feel comfortable in my own body because I have all this trauma and activation, all this stuff at home. And it's like, then you go into a system and it's like, hey, you could fit in here. You could be cool. You could be accepted. You could be unique. We could, because it's the social engineering of like supporting that versus questioning it altogether.
Hmm. You said something very important, other than questioning it altogether, because part of this AI takeover is you don't question. You simply take the answer that's given to you. And that's why people aren't questioning anymore. And
Hmm.
also, that's nurtured in the educational system. When I went to school, we had essays, and we would have to demonstrate the capacity to critically think about something. And, it was the outline. Here's your concept, and you have to give why you're doing it, give some examples, and then come to a conclusion about why you feel this is your position. That's not here anymore. It's multiple choice, and it was slowly led us into that. And so now people automatically don't question. They're looking for an answer without even saying, what is the answer to the question that was asked initially?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like
Why?
it's a machine of feeding you so many answers that your entire capacity is taken up by just like memorizing answers that
Yes,
were given to you as the ultimate truth.
yes. So, how do you find, as a mother, all the experience that you've had professionally, and now you're a mother with a 2 and 4 year old? That's a very different world.
Hmm.
What happens as a woman? What happens to your mind when I say the framework? Because your work is going to be very focused, it's going to be detailed, it's structured in a certain way where you're solving problems and you're interacting with other people. Okay. And your children, it's no time. They're not in time. They're just playing. They're doing things. I mean, how do you move back and forth?
Well, so when I first had my son, it was 2020 and the world was like going insane. And uh I had the kind of feminist like thing where I was like, I'm gonna keep doing my thing. I'm gonna do both. Like I'm gonna magically do both, and I'm gonna be a great mother, present mother that I want to be, and I'm also gonna like just keep like expanding my business. And about a year into that, it hit ahead, and I had to like really like listen to my gut, which said, let it all go.
How did your partner feel about that?
He was very supportive of that because he wanted me to be there because he couldn't be there. And like he was the primary like person bringing the income in anyways, even though my work wasn't bringing as much as his was. So it was like an easier decision that way. It was like for him, he was like, I would rather you be here with them. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah. And like, when I basically kind of like stopped everything. I got pregnant again and I thought I was going to like do more stuff. And because before what I was doing was I did a human design mentorship. I was doing sessions. I was doing EMDR with people. I was like, I was doing I was doing Reiki, like I was doing yoga. I was doing yoga, like 40-day yoga. I was doing a lot. And then I was like, what am I doing? I can't, because it was even when I wasn't doing it, I was still building it. I was still, even when I was with him, I was somewhere else. It was
Yes.
hard to be there. And so, um,
Did you put him in daycare, or who took care of the
no,
baby?
no, I just split the time with my husband. So it was like,
Okay.
and when he would do naps, that's when I'd be working. But then it was like hard to unplug, and I
It's
had
different
2 days
brain.
off where my husband would take him, and that's when I would do my sessions and stuff. So we
Okay.
were just trying to juggle it because I didn't want to give the care over to someone else. And it
Mhm.
didn't feel correct to hire anyone. I kept, because I was at that point, I was still very much listening to my intuition. So it was like, it wasn't correct. It wasn't correct. Everyone I felt out was a no. And on top of that, I didn't want to do any of the vaccinations. And so school in California, there's no exemption. You can't do anything. So there was just, it wasn't even like an option, but but it was kind of a blessing in disguise because it was like after digesting that, I didn't even really want to put him in any structured thing, you know?
Yes.
So, because all of this, I've been doing, I was in my experiment. So it's like I'm listening to my authority. And ultimately, it was like, you have to let this go. And it's correct. And my ego was like, no. My mind's like, no. Um, and then I did. And motherhood it was difficult at first to really, it was such an ego death to like let go of it. It's like, who am I without this like idea that I'm going to be this or that or the other? Like, um, so it's interesting because this is me entering another project, one day off a week where I'm just going to be sharing, but it's so different because it's like, I don't have an expectation. I don't know where I'm going. I could stop at any moment. So we'll see what it brings, but it feels correct to do a little bit of output. Like it just feels like a nice place now energetically, as a balance. But yeah, I left all of it. I don't know. I just felt correct. And then I totally left social media when my daughter, like 5 months before she was born, and unplugged from everything because I needed that. I needed to like stop taking in the conditioning field almost. Like I needed to stop being conditioned by all the people, like that I needed to do more, that I needed to be this, this, and this. And so, yeah. And now she's like 2.5, or well, two in a few months. And there's a little bit of a feeling like I can do a little bit, but I can't be committed to it, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. I know that as a projector, I had one son, but I had been an au pair for many years and six children in my family. And then I was a stepmother for four children. Now I'm a grandmother for a 2 and a 5-year-old. And I see them every weekend. So I'm very aware of the change in awareness. You have to be present with children. It's so important because I feel so um I can't find the word. I can't find the word. You could say upset, but profoundly disheartened or just puzzled by how people treat children, as though they have no rights, as though they're always to be told what to do, as though they have to do this and that, and that the parents own them. It's the guidance that's so important, and to find out their unique expression and how they can thrive and how they can enjoy the wonder of the world. And I can see with my grandson who's 2 and a half, he is highly spirited. Oh boy, is he spirited. And so I can see you could either crush that and
Mm-hmm.
make him despondent, and then that spirit's going to come up in a destructive way in the teenage years, or there's a way to guide it. But it's something that has to be there through the parents or the grandparents, because I've always said if this kid were in daycare, he'd come home with bruises, because a lot of people don't have the patience. And we're living in a world where there are many children that they're not eating right, they're homeless, they're getting drugged, they're getting diagnosed as having a problem. And I'm I'm just very disheartened because I see a lot of mothers just talking about their children in a way that doesn't respect maybe their role in raising that child. What are they doing in raising that child that might be contributing to what that child is doing? And and again, I have tremendous compassion for mothers, because single mothers too, because they've been told that single mothers is the Wonder Woman. You don't need a man. And I watched that from the 80s with Wonder Woman and everything. You don't
Mm-hmm.
need a man. And so therefore you can raise children by your own, but you're actually just farming them out. And then you're dealing with pressure outside. The kids don't feel loved. They don't have two parents. And then we have a Molotov cocktail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we grew up in the generation of like Destiny's Child, like all my women independent. It was just like it was like through the music industry, like over and over again, like your worth comes from being this like independent women. You don't need anything else. You can do it all on your
Mhm.
own. And then you
Mhm.
have women who are just totally burnt out, depressed, and on drugs. It's like not working for anyone. And I think with so when you said highly spirited, my son is a manifesting generator with all four motors defined, two pure manifestor channels, two emotional channels. So like if I didn't know his design, like I totally can see how, like you can crush them and like try to he has a defined heart, 21st gate. And yeah, I don't know. And so for me, it's like I couldn't be what he needed me to be and be working. It was like I have to choose. Like, do I want to nourish him and be present with him and guide like where he's going with this energy, help and it's night and day. Like and that I think is a little bit some stuff I've got from like that family therapy training too, because it's like when you're doing family therapy, it's not about like doing therapy on the child, right? You recognize that there's a system. You recognize that there's parents that ultimately guide what's happening with the child. And it's not really about what the child's doing wrong because you get the parents and their correctness. And it's kind of like the kids thrive in that? So it was like, do I want to hate this phase and destroy like, his direction, or do I want to just like let go of the thing my ego thinks I want that I know is correct to let go of?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it still takes choosing and letting go of, and it was difficult, but I feel like so freeing when you do, because then you can actually sink in and be with them because you're not thinking about the client that you need to like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's beautifully said. Your son is fortunate. I know the big thing that came out was quality time. You can work all the time, but let's set up quality time. But time doesn't work that way. Children don't work that way. And I remember when I would drive my son to school every single day and pick him up because I knew there were problems on the school bus. And so I said, well, I'm just going to drive my son to school and go back home and then drive him back, and I can listen to things on the radio and do my thing, whatever. Um, and I remember those times are so important because he was just coming out of school. And I knew right away if there was something we had to handle in his thinking, what happened there. And I could tell right away if he threw his backpack in the back of the seat, and you could just feel the emotions oozing off of him. And in that moment, we could handle it. It wasn't tucked away, waiting for dinner, or at 8 o'clock at night saying, okay, sweetheart, time for bed. Is there anything you want to share with me? This is our quality time. I'm not dissing quality time, but I'm saying whoever set that out there is promising something that may not materialize according to the promise because it's the child's timing, not the parents'. Or you could say it's a balance between. And this whole thing of my quality time was nothing that I set up. It wasn't quality time. It was time where truth was shared and a time to handle problems as they arose. And it wasn't entertaining my son, and it wasn't providing toys or, stimulation or letting him watching South Park or Mr. Rogers. It was really being there when he needed guidance. And my attention was there for him. So it's a dilemma. It's going to be interesting to see how it comes out.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's needed in this time. And I feel like in my generation, we had like Scorpio and Pluto, and I kind of feel like that was a big theme of like, oh, let me like go through my trauma and heal things. So it was interesting me for you saying that opening in the 60s. I was like, oh, I thought that was like such a big boost in our generation, but it may have been like an even bigger, like where it was like accepted and in a wider, maybe
Oh,
because it had been planted so much earlier.
it was planted in, well, I would say 1946, because many of the boomers that ushered that in had Neptune in gate 18, line 5, which was therapy. So when
Mm-hmm.
they came of age, the society was ready to reconsider what is the mind, what is consciousness, but also it was the drugs flowing into the country because we're always dealing with the binary, the good and
Mm-hmm.
the bad, the beautiful and the ugly. And so I remember when Eagleton was a vice presidential candidate I think he was with Goldwater, but it was in the early 70s, and someone found out he went to have one appointment with a psychologist. He was dropped from the ticket like a hot potato because anybody who thought sought counseling, therapy, psychology, are you crazy? So it really wasn't. And I remember when I went to a yoga ashram to study yoga in 1979 with Swami Rama, I remember my mother was so upset. When I was studying astrology, it was a dark art. All these things did not come out until the 80s, but the foundation was laid in the 60s and the 70s. But it took you could say it was the children born, I call the shit kickers, born when Pluto and Uranus came together from 67, around 1967, 65, 66, 67. And that was in Virgo. And those are the people that came out and really made businesses out of the healing modalities of therapy, yoga, and all that. Because if something isn't a business, it's hard to access it. So you can almost see in the planetary arrangement how each decade or Plutonian generation is imprinted to create the the change in consciousness needed for this evolutionary development. And as a baby boomer, it was all about power. But then it became, again, a split between external power and internal power. So you had the vulture capitalists and the political rapists all out there. And then you had the back to the landers, the new agers, the healers, and all that. Always operates like that. But when the 80s came, there was the ability to seek guidance, which I thought was extraordinary and very powerful. But again, you always have the true and the fake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they seem to intertwine. They seem to intertwine.
Would it say some more like
Well, if you're a gardener, let's say if you're a
mm-hmm.
gardener, because you can see the principle throughout many different modalities. If if you're gardening and let's say you're planting marigolds and you put the seed in the ground, you've cultivated the soil, it is perfect. You put that marigold seed in the ground and you do a whole row of marigolds. Oh my God, there is a weed that comes up and mimics exactly the marigold. You've got to wait a little bit more to see how the other leaves come out to say, oh, this is the fake mimicking the true. You'll see that so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are many people, the whole idea of the cults that came in, and whether it's Jonestown, whether it was when the Hale-Bopp comet came in 1987, and the people in the cult just took all that. You could say they wanted to ascend with a comet that was in the late 80s or 90s. I think it was April or late March of 1997. But all these people giving their power away to a guru, giving their power away to someone who knew more than they did. And there's some gurus that are true. They are very good. But a lot of gurus had people take the shot, the jab.
Mm-hmm. The current guru. Yeah, the whole well, it's interesting too because Ross said like we're in the time where like facts are the authority, but then you have like the false facts or like the
Yes, the false gods.
and when you had mentioned kind of like we're not allowed to question things, yeah, the whole term what was that term? Where if you went along with it like you were a good person,
Comply.
virtue
Yeah,
signaling.
virtue signaling. Yeah,
So, or a lot of people were like, I'm a good person. I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to take it. I'm going to tell because I'm a good person. And so it became like this, like you don't have your own authority anymore because the authority is like some false, like, yeah, construction.
it's an idealized image. You become the empathic Nazi. Oh my God, if you don't do this, then your grandmother's going to die. Or if you don't do this, you'll be outside of the tribe.
But what about the grandmothers dying from doing it? It was like, no, we're not going to
They don't
talk
see it.
about
They
that.
don't see it because they've been programmed that part of the mind is shut down.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally shut down. They cannot take that information in. They're blind to it. And this is why I love in the the new plan in 2027, when you have the cross of penetration, gate 54, which is now opening up the secret to the next 400 years, whatever, but the next 67 years, it says you have to have an ingrained responsibility for your security and personal identity to align only with those people that share your same values. Even if a person doesn't believe, you cannot waste your time by trying to convince them because you'll waste your energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so often you'll find that they can turn against you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see already what's happening with the Teslas, blowing up the Teslas. But of course, that's organized by private money because they want to create, you could say, the Civil War, which is all part of the breakdown of the crafts of planning. And still, people don't see it. They'll cheer. These people that, quote, consider themselves liberal, um, and hold labels as to who they are. That's a limitation right there.
Yeah,
And
because then you kind of have to co-sign everything that falls into that thing, even if you don't agree, you just don't question it. It's just like, I'm on this side, therefore.
yeah, and that anything goes then.
Mm-hmm.
Anything goes because I think it was in Scarface. He says, "Well, not women and children." And then as he got deeper into this thing, then women and children were targets. And that's the whole thing with sleepwalking into your own demise. It happens very slowly, but there's certain markers that can wake you up where if someone now is saying, "I'm the expert, I'm going to take over," and you are too lazy to do your research or you go into a trance, literal trance. Oh, you're the expert. And then you give your power away, then no one's going to cover you. No one's paying for the health payments of people that were injured by the jab. No one's paying for that, or for the family wealth that's being depleted by that, or for what's being put on the internet. I mean, there are a lot of challenges being a parent now. And if you're not a full-time parent, whew, it's difficult.
Yeah, a lot of it's interesting too because you have to like deprogram so much of that. But I kind of feel like that's where like they like the whole like living as yourself, living like making decisions as yourself because you
Yes.
start to see your own like it just starts to fall away. It's like not it doesn't hook you because you're not making decisions by the program anymore, which is the mind. I really like have you ever seen the work of Byron Katie? Just
Yeah.
kind of questioning the thoughts you're thinking.
Yes.
I had that before human design, so I think it was like kind of merged nicely for me because it was like I was already questioning the thoughts that I would think when I was making my decisions,
Mhm.
and I had a guttural feeling to leave my track as a therapist, and
Yes.
my mind said, "You're crazy. You have any idea how much money you've spent? Like how much time, how many hours? Like you can't leave." But I just knew that it was weird. I had this like internal like basically like you're gonna die if you stay here, which seems kind of dramatic, but it was like a feeling of like this track is like killing you in a way. It's like killing your life force. Like it's not correct. And you're
Mhm.
just doing it because your mind is attached to it.
Mhm.
But yeah, all these different ways to like let go of the thoughts you think.
What was the signal? What was the significant realization that said, if I stay here, I'm going to die? Because that's actually not an unusual response when you're a four in your profile.
Interesting. Well, I'm a 3-5, but I have my 2010 is a 4.
Uh-huh.
My behavior of self is a 4. My 10.4. But when was that?
In other words, if you have a four somewhere in your design,
Hmm.
if you've hit the end of the road, you've hit the end of the road. You're not going to go any further. There are no more tracks. And so what happens is you realize that another way to say it would be your life force will be cut off.
Yeah.
No energy yet to move forward. The mind will interpret it in the old way of seeing, I'm going to die. No, I'm going to die. Well, yes, the life force is
Yeah.
not supporting that track anymore. You've
Hmm.
got to go this way. And someone would
Hmm.
say, oh, no, don't be over dramatic here. We can work through this. But when you become, as you said, you knew it deep down inside of you, and you've got the, I think you have the 2343, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's very mutative. And when you know, you know.
Hmm. When I was actually doing a breathwork exercise and I heard it and I was like, what? Because I knew it was true. I heard it. It was that like mutative knowing kind of feeling. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I do need to. And I was like, okay. Like, because it was something that had been brewing in my subconscious for so long. Like, I already heard it a million times that it was incorrect, but I didn't want to let it go, you know?
Any
And
regrets? Any regrets?
no, because no, no.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
I mean, I, it's not that I couldn't go back if it was correct ever.
What's fascinating is that now, how old are you?
35.
Okay, you're a young one. Anyone listening? 35 is young. You haven't even hit the Uranus opposition. And oftentimes there's this urgency where you feel you'll always be a mother or you're giving up a career. The key thing is the flowering of your life really doesn't happen until you're 50. And childhood as a mother, it goes so quickly. And it's so wondrous. I love being with my grandchildren because my awareness has changed. I know their designs. I can see their designs playing out like little robots. It's like, whoa, okay, this is what's going to happen. Whereas I didn't see that with my son. And I did make amends with my son by saying, ah, I can't believe whatever. Like he's a 4-6, and I'd say, you don't need friends. Or, or he was, what was the other one? Oh, generator. Mm-hmm. Uh-uh. And I would say, you're not Neanderthal. I want you articulate yes and no. And I had to go back and
Hmm.
apologize. I said I was ignorant, but this is a gift that I have. I can always admit when I was ignorant and I made decisions that didn't support the proper growth of someone or their self-love factor. So when I look at the beauty of, let's say, the human design and child rearing with that, it goes so quickly. So you're in this little theater of children from 0 to 7. And then Saturn moves around and you've got a change now in the brain. The corpus callosum is on track. Then you go 7 to 14. They're very different. Instead of you being the main one, it's the outer world. And then 14 to 21, it's very different. And you begin to see this whole biological growth of your children. And then all of a sudden, what do I do? You have all that maturation and wisdom and deep bonding with your children that you can go out and have a very fruitful career or do your own business. In other words, this is a time that doesn't last forever. It's brief. It's like a flash in the pan. But the irony of this is what you do during this time is critical to the quality of life that you have from 50 on.
Hmm.
But at 35, you don't see that because you don't have the spectrum of cycles and ages. And I'm in my 70s now. So when I look at life, I can say, oh, you're in the 60s. Welcome to the club. This is what you need to know. Or the 40s. Oh, you're feeling so urgent about things. Let's take a deep breath and let's restructure. But it's interesting. I love the movie Benjamin Button, with Brad Pitt
Hmm.
because he aged backwards. And I thought how wonderful that if you could come in with the knowledge that there are definite cycles that you go through. If you are a mother and you're having children, enjoy it. Sometimes, after a couple diapers, you've had it. Go out, go for a walk, wash your hands, read an inspirational book, find a friend. But it goes fast. The rewards are profound. So my hat's off to you Cassandra, for making this choice because it's difficult because you're making a choice, but it's going to affect your partner, it's affecting your children, it's affecting all the people that could benefit from you working with them as a therapist. So your one decision has powerful effect on all those people that you were connected to, you are connected to, and you will be connected to, in your next cycle.
Thank you for that recognizing.
Yeah.
I
You want
feel I feel
to,
grateful to be in a space where other people have shared that wisdom of like it goes fast and like it's a flash in the pan. And when I heard that like you're not an adult until 40 kind of according to design, I'm
yes,
like yeah, like I didn't think of it that way. I have open root. So like I was in such a rush to like get there. Like if I'm not successful by 30, like it was just such a that's like the program, the
it is
programming.
programming because I was raised before the television. I mean, so it was an acoustic cusp. Everything was quiet. It was so quiet. And there was not a lot of visual stimulation. So life, it's hard to describe.
Mm.
It was timeless. There was no rush.
I don't
And
know. Yeah, wow,
there was
cool.
no rush. But as soon as TV came,
hmm
and then the Vietnam War was on the TV in the 60s, and Dylan came and all that. You could see the the changing the programming of the psyche. And it wasn't bad, it wasn't good, it just was what was. But
hmm
I'm very grateful. And I talk to people my age and they say, well, we were raised during the golden age. And I say, well, it was a different age because there were a lot of problems in that time. But it was an age when we were not assaulted by this need to be someone or the
hmm
need to take in so much information or the need to prove ourselves as women. We didn't have to do that. And that was the golden part of it.
what do you feel about like this cusp that we're on right now with coming up to 2027 and just like what we're moving into and like what I don't know, like what do you see? What do you feel like it people is like what's helpful to people listening?
I think there are a lot of people who won't see it because they
Mhm.
won't, they've been trained to be destructive, self-destructive. Okay. So when you're self-destructive and you can't make decisions for yourself, you're not going to see it. There are times I didn't see it because I was very self-destructive. All of this from the programming of the 60s and all of that. But I was fortunate to get the right guidance to see. So there's a very creative time. You have to be very aware of who you associate with, and you have to be financially responsible. Everything is about money. And spirituality is not an avoidance, it's common sense. As above, so below. There are shifts that are happening that you have to respect, and it's not personal. So if you want to take care of yourself, you have to look at the debt economy that was put into place when we went off the gold standard. You have to look at things are collapsing and people, top people, whether it's Gerald Celente, Ray Dalio, um, those are just two people holding different political viewpoints that are millionaires. Ray Dalio, I think, is a billionaire. Um, they know things are falling apart. And what holds us together is business. Everything is business. And if the dollar falls down, are you like the Weimar Republic where you take a bushel basket for bread? When I followed Ramtha in the 80s, Jay-Z Knight was a channel and Ramtha was a full body channel. Back in the 80s, he said, get gold, get gold. So, and that was gold was about
I was
$200.
gonna say that would have been great advice back then.
But see, people then couldn't see.
hmm
Even in, I think it was in 2003, gold was still just 200. And just 6 months ago, it was 2100.
So crazy how much it's expanded.
So, so you can see that gold is interesting, but you also need food.
hmm
And you have to be able to see that there are forces that are working against you. And so this is where you become very creative. And one thing that I'm aware of is many people who don't understand deeply 2027, the two crosses at work, what's happening. They're fear mongering. And when people move into fear, they're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? It's just a shift. And so I saw a shift when we went off gold. As a child, you had small local markets. We took cloth bags. We went to the butcher. We went to the baker. It wasn't the big supermarkets. I watched all that happen. We have to go local, and we
Hmm.
have to realize that the key here is what we call sovereignty. And I would say that you have to have food, you have to have some gold, you have to, prepare for what's coming because it's coming. And we're in war now. And it's an asymmetric war, so people don't understand it. But now we're seeing it with the swatting that's happening, the Tesla dealerships that are blowing up, and nowhere. I get on, I am apolitical, so I'm on the Republican, the Democrat emails. And I'll see emails coming by that says Musk is taking away Social Security. And I'll say, show me that. I haven't seen any evidence of that. I get my Social Security check every month. In fact, I got a raise this month due to inflation. But people, to create fear, will take little snippets of information. And because mental illness is so rampant now, and there's a whole group of people that are called out to cause problems, you have to be aware that that's real.
Hmm.
It only takes 20% to upend a country to create a revolution, a civil war. These are all things that are happening now, but when you're aware of it, the energy changes. There's no fear, there's awareness. And awareness is okay, what's going to happen next? You're not Chicken Little, the sky is falling. And I would say that the beauty of human design is that prophecy when Rob was talking about, I remember I was in a class in 2002 or 2003, having my latte in a comfortable chair, saying, this is crazy. And then I started watching what was happening. And then I thought, nope, the pillars are being removed and something else is happening here instead of feeling afraid. Oh my God. And so what I think is that it's a time for creative re-engineering of your life. And going back to how I was raised, we had a garden, we had this, but the community was together. It was a small town. And here's something, I grew up in a small town where porches were in the front. And in the 50s, the porches went off the front, patios in the back. The security system was the people sitting on porches at night. They could see who was on the street.
Hmm.
And then they put the garages in. But you had to get out of the car, open the garage door, and if your neighbor was there, you talk. Then it was the automatic garage door. You can go in and out. Now the patio's in the back. Now the fences are coming up. So gradually we're bunkering down. But the key thing is partnerships. So partnerships are going to be very important. And I'd say the currency moving forward is trust. You've got to find people that you trust that have the same value system. And and that's all you can do because we're not in control. But we all are part of what's happening. And so our little part can be accessed through our decision inner authority. And then we'll know what to do. But the key is not to put blinders on and saying this is not happening.
Hmm.
When, just as a funny story, when COVID happened, I said, this is a cult. This is BS.
I
So
love that you say that because that's exactly how I felt. I was
yes,
just like, what is going
but
on?
I was really concerned because I knew how many people would buy into it and it would separate families. First, it was pro-choice, pro-life. Now it's vaxxed or no vaxxed and whatever. So what I did is I went to all the grocery stores. That was my entertainment. And I would go to all the grocery stores in Austin and I would see a couple items. Did this store have it? Did this store have it? Did this store have it? And I looked and analyzed supply chain lines for food. And the co-ops, they would go out first. And then the larger stores that were local did pretty well. But ultimately, the one that always had what you wanted was Whole Foods because it's part of the elite group, you know. So it was fascinating to look, though, to see how quickly things would go off the shelf because people don't prepare. There are a lot of people that will never prepare because they're in trauma and they're just doing one moment at a time. So that's what I would say. You need to be financially sound. You have to have, whatever you need to be financially sound and protect yourself.
Yeah.
So what
Slow.
precautions?
So I feel like 2020 started to click that in for so many who
Are
are
you in
paying.
California?
Yes.
Where in California?
Sacramento.
Hmm. Okay,
Hmm.
you're not in the Bay Area or LA or San Diego. Okay.
Mm-mm. A little more inland.
Okay. Okay. It's a beautiful valley there.
Hmm.
Hmm. So the precautions that you would take would be unique to your needs, your family needs, and your neighbors and things like that. And you just sit down with a plan. And you say, "This is what I'm going to do."
There are many times where, like, just people I am good friends with and trust, we'd be like, okay, so what do we do? Where do we meet? Like, if we need to, if the power goes out or something, I don't know. But
You
yeah,
have to
I've
have
I've been
alternative
trying to
power.
learn how to garden. Not very good at it yet. Third, definitely in my third phase of
Yes.
it. We have some gold that we've invested in.
Good. Good.
We have
Gardening
some
in
solar energy sources.
solar energy, seeds. Seeds are very important.
I've
And
gotten seeds.
understanding, I would find a farm or someone who's really good in farm and mentor with.
Mm.
I lived off the
Oh,
grid. I lived off the grid for 4 years without heat or running water. So
cool.
you have no idea what living
Very
off
hard.
is like. Yes,
Yes, I've
it
heard
is.
very hard, but I don't know it
It is.
experientially.
But you do know that there's a beauty to it as well.
Hmm.
There's a beauty to it as well. The key thing is heat, water, food. That's it. You have to have a roof over your head. You have to be warm and dry. You have to have water to hydrate, and you have to have food. And so the garden becomes a central core of your plan. And then you have bulk supplies that you can use. They're vertical gardening experts inside, but then you need lights, you need electricity.
Hmm.
Unless you have a solar hookup, it can be challenging.
We've
But
been wanting to move for a while, but we haven't, nothing's felt correct. So we're just waiting to see what
uh-huh.
and if it is correct to move. I've thought about like Tennessee or Utah or I don't know, but I don't know
Well,
where.
if you may be fine just where you are.
Hmm.
Um, there's a good book called 72 Hours written by a person in Venezuela. And the key is the first 3 days you don't go out. Just in any kind of crisis, you don't go out, say, oh, let me just run to the store to get something. No.
Hmm.
Um, but I would find a mentor with gardening. I grew up, we always had a garden. And when I lived in the mountain subsistence farming, we had a wheat grinder. We had to hand grind the wheat, but there was a community. It wasn't a commune. Everybody had their own little farm, but we all shared solutions to challenges that we had. But that's when I really simplified my needs and understood as a human, you have to be healthy. And that means you don't want to get cold and wet. You want to be
Hmm.
warm and dry. So a continuous heat supply is important. And if you're in Sacramento, you can do much better when it's hot versus when it's cold.
It doesn't get too cold here, but it does get pretty hot, but it doesn't get too cold. It gets,
You can do a swamp fan, but then again,
yeah.
you need electricity there too. But if
Hmm.
you have a water supply, you can cool off that way.
Yeah.
Just and who knows, but you have to be prepared so you're not reactive. That's why I
Hmm.
say it's a very creative time to uh, and there's also 25 years food supplies that you can get. And there are a lot of
Interesting.
different suppliers there, which I highly recommend.
Okay. I've been like, my pantry is getting larger, but I haven't done anything like major.
Yeah. So there's a fresh food that you're used to and frozen food.
Mm-hmm.
Get that. That's good for now. Then you've got the canned supplies that can be 3 to 5 years. And the expiration dates that they put on food are not necessarily accurate, but they put it on because of lawsuits. Or you just check the lids, 3 to 5 years. And then you have the 25-year food supply that's freeze dried, and you just add water. So they're different because even if society gets, let's say if the worst thing happens and society starts to function again, food is the main thing. It's the main thing. And, um, but this is where I say it's actually a very creative time because if we're moving from dependency and interdependency, which was all about collective growth, tribal expansion, materiality, we're moving into a different kind of materiality. And it is key on the individual, being busy and starting something new. So that means it's either creative or you're throwing in the towel and saying, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm neither optimistic nor pessimistic, but I do know that uh, in any revelation that a person receives, and Ross spoke to this, that he has an obligation to the collective not to reveal everything that he knows. Because when you're living in the present moment, if you're not aware, you get into fear. And then your whole life gets down the drain of, I can't do anything, the world sucks, we're all gonna die. That kind of and some people will be that way, so enjoy your
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
But I have noticed whether it's Eckhart Tolle or whether it's human design or whether it's Joe Dispenza or different people, they're doing a lot of workshops now to get people consciously aware so they can let go of dependency on an expert or a society to provide the answers for them. I've never seen such a flourishing of
Mm-hmm.
workshops and information.
Yeah, to deal with the pressures of the times. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are a lot of pressures. And you've got
Mm-hmm.
little, beautiful little ones.
Mm-hmm. What seemed like I kind of feel like when you're following that's what seems that you don't want this thing at first, and then when you let go of it, it's like, oh, okay, I get to see the gifts now. I get to see why that's like better than the other route that my mind was thinking we should go down.
What I have found is if you're in fear, human design fear talks about building intelligence, and it's a first line, meaning that you have to research, you have to go to the foundation of something, you have to go deep. That means you have to get the information needed to allay your fear. So knowing that money is everything, and Ra said if he didn't charge the amount of money that he did in human design, it never would have reached the people that he wanted it to reach. And he said everything's business. So when I researched all these financial gurus, they're all saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why when you can look at people of different political spectrum, different races, different nationalities, and saying what's their agenda, what are they doing, and you put it in kind of a chart, and they're all pointing to the same thing, we know right away it's just a trigger that will activate it all. So great, there's some trigger nobody knows. So if nobody knows, then there's going to be some sort of segue into a change, and you're just prepared for it.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard of the telepathy tapes?
Yes, I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what in our last like few minutes, so when I heard those, I was like, wow, like I just hear the rave, like the mutation that's happening, plus because like a lot of the aspects of what the gifts of those kids are, being nonverbal, being able to kind of communicate, and I remember I was like listening to Ron, he was talking about how like these kids won't even, it'll seem like nothing's going on. And then, but they're like in their own world, like connecting. So it's kind of interesting to see that because it's like, I think we'll be provided for in ways we don't understand or know yet if we follow it. I mean, not everyone, obviously, there's going to be a lot of crazy turmoil in the world.
Mhm.
But as you said, like awareness is everything.
Mhm. And the beauty of uh, the telepathy tapes is Ra had mentioned that autism was a precursor to the raves.
Mm-hmm.
And what those tapes showed me is many people have that capability, but because of the culture, they were shut down by
Mm-hmm.
religions, authorities, and fear.
Mm-hmm.
You're the devil. And I think it was in the first of the tapes where the mother was concerned because they were of a certain religion that if she'd gone to the head of the religion, they would consider it was satanic or evil spirits
Mm-hmm.
coming through there. She loved her daughter. So you can see that the daughter was so extreme, by not being able to speak, that the mother wanted to protect her, the mama bear, right? Nothing was wrong with
Mm-hmm.
her, the mama bear. Something was different with her. And then, the skeptics, and then what she's met, in terms of the industrial monetary complex of psychiatry and all that. The the fact that there are a lot of these kids coming out now, to me, just shows that's the next evolutionary step because they're programmed differently.
Mm-hmm. They feel
And
like they're going to be a bridge.
they're a bridge, but we will never enter the world of the rave. Two
No.
different worlds. We will
Do you
never enter
feel
that.
like they will help, though, bridge the gap between humans and Raves? Since they will be able to do more of the telepathy, or no, not at all.
No, they're going to be
Okay.
they're programmed differently. Their design is different.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does show is there's a um, Ross spoke that he was concerned. He wanted many people to become design analysts and understand about the raves because he didn't know what they would look like, but he felt that when they started to be born, that particularly with abortions that can, or what do you call it, infanticide that's legal in some states, that the babies would be killed. That's what
Mm-hmm.
was his concern. So they're not going to look like these people.
When you see that opening more where they're allowing that like up to 9 months where it's like, oh, there's no restriction anymore on when you can take that. And they're gonna have like different skin. I remember him saying like the skin will be thicker. And what caught me though is one of the kids from the telepathy tapes was talking about like there's like we're the beginning is what he said. And so I was like the beginning of the mutation. So
Mhm.
I just was curious, like, would they be able to like bridge that? Like, because we won't be able to, I don't know. But what I also thought was interesting was like, so they don't need to be together to communicate.
Correct.
And Rod talked about the raves needing to be
Together
physically. So I'm
to create the
wondering,
penta, to create the penta. Because you see with the
do you think
cross
that they
planning,
could do it across time and space more than Ra thought?
anything's possible, but one thing that he did say is that with the cross of planning, the
Mm-hmm.
penta for humans breaks down. They are still
Mm-hmm.
human.
True.
They're still human.
Mm-hmm.
The penta for the raves is what will really be activated. So they may be able to communicate, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but they still are human. But
Right.
Rob was these are not human. And he
Right.
likened it to the Cro-Magnon and the Neanderthal, how they lived together. So it would be interesting. And I'm not saying that Ra had the final answer because there are many questions that he had, but he also said he did not share a lot because of that concern for how the collective would interpret it and use it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I loved listening to the telepathy tapes because it shows that we don't need experts.
Mm-mm.
We can use them who've been very deep in their studies, but and that's okay, but oftentimes the experts stop growing,
Yeah.
retain their position, and now they're working for people above them to push an agenda. And life is constantly about changing, evolving, and whatever. So, of course, things can change when the rave happens, the mutation. And Ra was on this side of the mutation, not on the rave side.
Right.
So it's hard to say because it's a different frequency.
Yeah. And like you were talking about earlier, like the whole thing with experts is they've been specifically designed by a system that doesn't want you to be your own
Well,
authority.
you went into a system. with your therapy and psychology, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And were there, and could you ask questions and challenge some of the theories that were being given to you?
In ways, but in ways, no. I mean, in ways, yes, in ways, no. But there are controversial things. There are things that shift. There are things that grow. There's things that I learned the term differentiation of self there, and it actually it does apply across. There's a like a, but it was more of a, it came from a MFT who was a bit of a change maker, in discovering like the higher the level of differentiation in a couple, the deeper the intimacy could be. Basically, it was like because they weren't fused anymore, and
Yeah.
like kind of, the freedom of love to actually like allow someone to be who they are. Um,
That's a Jungian, Jung used that term, differentiation.
yeah,
He was an astrologer. So
Young was pretty cool. I love Young.
he looked at the differentiation factor in terms of where Mars was in the chart. And Ra used individuation, say, just different words. But it was interesting. Jung, at the time, it was being different. In Ra was individuation, as the individual. Difference is in relationship to something other than yourself. So you can even see the difference in the word for empowerment.
So he changed it later to differentiation.
Well, I mean, because I trained in astrology and Jungian astrology, and then when I saw differentiation and individuation, both looking at the Mars, I thought that's an interesting evolution of what it is for a person to become themselves and to be empowered. One says you're individualizing as an individual. The other one said you're just different from someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't necessarily mean that the core of who you are has been realized because you can't get there mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And with Ra, you had the blueprint to find, okay, this is the mysterious. And even though Jung was an astrologer, profoundly, I mean, just amazing. It was just
Mm.
one birthday used, just one birthday. And the whole planetary alignment 88 days before was not included in the assessment of an individual. It's a big difference. And what I also liked is when the astrology is patriarchal, was designed by men, and Ra always said, I speak for the mother. Human design is yin. I like human design. I couldn't figure out why I switched so quickly when I found human design.
Yeah. And the yin is all there is, really, right?
Yeah, the yin
We're
has,
yin yin.
yeah, it, it's a different, I mean, you can see just from the giants in this whole evolutionary program how even their perception changes and gives us more to work with. And then more people can become aware. I mean, it's really quite extraordinary to see those people that are designed to express a new way of looking at something. And that's why the raves are going to be interesting.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's probably, yeah, it'll probably take a while before we're like really seeing that.
And one thing that in some of Ra's classes, he said, I would not want to be a mother with a rave child. And that was another concern
Hmm.
because the rave won't be able to interact.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
going to be a very aware mother
Yeah.
to to raise a rave child.
Hmm.
Because so much of a mother, I mean, you must enjoy the interaction with your child, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
the eye contact.
Hmm. The
And they call
touch.
you mama and they touch you. It's
Hmm.
kind of your reward.
Yeah. It's literally like they're like designed that way because it's really hard, but so yeah, the challenge is without the reward, the output without the input. It's like
Yes.
so, That's what he mentioned. It would have to take someone who's super like selfless because it's like, or not selfless, but like you have to know that you're not going to get the return on that investment. There's
Correct.
no relay.
But then probably they've already been chosen to be the mothers. If you look at the way the program works.
Yeah.
I'm
Interesting
just,
times.
I'm glad I'm not one of those mothers. It's past me. It would be hard.
Hmm. Do you think awareness will help there? Do you think they'll go into a system? What do you think?
I don't know.
I mean, awareness would have to be kind of a necessary, I guess, to not.
Yeah, or else there'll be some, what people say during war, collateral damage.
Hmm.
And that's a real concern.
And he had
Because
mentioned he didn't know if the mutation would necessarily take hold, but he said, I assume it will, but
it may not, but we're certainly seeing a lot of mutations happening right now.
yeah.
And had he lived longer, I think he would have begun to see the prophecy unfold.
Hmm. And in a weird way, I kind of feel like he knew he wasn't meant to be here for it. I mean, he'd say sometimes he wanted to be, and then other times he'd be like, that's not my time. I don't want to be like, I don't know much about Vedic astrology, but I'd heard someone who was like close with him say that he had a Vedic astrology reading where they told him that he was going to pass by his 63rd birthday or something from his Vedic. I don't know if you can tell that in Vedic, but I don't know if the story is true.
No, someone close to him, there were 5 openings. There's not just one portal, there are different portals. And there were 5 openings, and he had made it through 2. It was the third one that he went out on. So I think he was ready.
Hmm.
I think he was ready because anyone who has that kind of knowledge and then you're propelled to teach all the time, um, sometimes you just get tired.
Hmm. Yeah, I've heard that a lot in his like later lectures where he's just done. I could
Yeah,
I could just hear it.
yeah,
He was done. He's
yeah.
like, I've done it. I've done what I came here to do. I'm done.
Yeah, and it was
Now you take
25
it.
years. It was 25 years
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Hmm.
What I like watching is just to see, as he said so beautifully, I'm just planting the seeds. I'll never see the flourishing.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, that was very humble.
Well, thank you so much for all of your wisdom and time
You're welcome.
sharing. It was a lot of fun. I liked hearing
Yeah.
everything you had to say.
Yeah. Oh, great meeting you. And I'm so delighted that you're a mom, that you're assuming or embracing that role and being there for your children because the rewards are just extraordinary.
I feel that.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Have a
Okay,
good
all
one,
the
Barbara.
best. Yeah, okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.